We bid you welcome. We do not ask what you believe or expect you to think in a certain way, but only that you try to live a kindly, helpful life with the dignity proper to a human being. Welcome all who believe that religion is wider than any sect and deeper than any set of opinions. Welcome all who might find in our friendship strength and encouragement for daily living. A chalice lit in our midst is a symbol of our liberal faith, a faith built on the foundation of freedom, reason, and tolerance, a faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that visions a world flourishing with equality for all her people, a faith that demands the living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. This tiny flame is the symbol of the spark of all this within each of us. Good morning and welcome. Welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is Jessica Sanchez and I am the chair of the Sunday Services Committee. The mission of my committee is to provide the Sunday service morning experience for the UUCF members and guests, as well as to provide an avenue for outreach to the surrounding community. Our minister, the Reverend Glenn Farley, is out of the pulpit today. We are fortunate to have Marie Lowry speaking. Marie has been a member of UUCF for 12 years. She is part of the Save the World group that meets Sunday nights at 7 p.m. with the hope of making the world a better place. The group was formed as a result of a sermon she delivered in 2016. Excuse me. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors today. After the service, we invite you to the back of the meeting house. When indoors, excuse me, we are observing COVID precautions and wearing masks regardless of vaccination status. Religious education classes are being held in the social hall during service, and usher can direct you to that location if needed. Joys and sorrows can be shared later in the service after the offering. You are welcome to come up to the microphone. If you are uncomfortable sharing at the microphone, we have blue Joys and Sorrows cards that are now in the pews for easy access. These cards can be filled out and given to the ushers as they pass by with the offertory plates and read by me later in the service. If you would like your Joys and Sorrows read by me through text message, you can text me at my phone number, which is on the second page of the order of service. If you want your name to be read, you can include it in the text message in case I don't have your number programmed into my phone. As we begin our service, we remember that our UU principles begin with our pledge to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We are a welcoming congregation. We welcome into our community people of all races, sexual orientations, gender identities, and belief systems. And so now it's time for some announcements. I have one announcement. I just wanted to let people know that the board game afternoon is this coming Saturday, April 9th at 1 p.m. If you need any childcare, that should be provided. You can contact Jamie Sanchez for information if you're interested.
So apologies, your order service says that Eugene Bondarenko will be speaking about Ukraine. Sorry. This was not a bait and switch. He isn't here. He couldn't be here. So you're stuck with me for a couple minutes. I know probably very little more about Ukraine than all of you do from watching the news, but I do know a couple things that I can share with you. One of them is that many years ago, someone I love dearly, who in Germany, she grew up just west of Berlin on a farm, told me about the end of the war for her. She was 12 or 13 when the war ended, and how grateful they were that the Americans reached their village and not the Russians, because they knew what the Russian army does in its path. The brutality of the Russian army is well known and has been well known for a long time. War is always horrible. But what we're seeing right now in Ukraine is tipped beyond war crimes and is looking more and more like genocide. So, when you see all those pictures coming out of the towns that they're leaving, keep in mind that for every body you see, there are many other people left behind who are grieving and traumatized and need support. another friend, a wise friend, who grew up on the east side of Detroit, a little older than I am. He grew up in a Polish-speaking neighborhood. He wrote last year when the war began on Facebook. I thought that this was really compelling. He wrote, "It was probably about third grade that I began to learn this form of empathy. After school, classmates and I would take the shortcut down the alley home. The old lady, weather permitting, would stand at the back gate of her house. 'Where is Yashu?' she would ask in Polish. 'He comes,' we would quietly respond and hurry past her. We had queried our parents about her and her continuing question. Her son Yashu had been killed in the First World War. 'Tell her he comes,' our parents told us. 'There's nothing else you can do for her. Let her know a moment of hope.' It was years later that I came to understand that it is only the survivors who can receive the gift of grief, and that only some who are not killed survive." We've selected the organization Razum. There's an envelope in your order of service. Razum was founded after the 2014 Revolution of Dignity with the goal of building a more prosperous Ukraine. It's a large group. They've been doing amazing work for a number of years. They are now focusing, obviously, on the war effort. They're delivering medical supplies. They've delivered over 218 tons in the last month of medical supplies to Ukraine. And they're also focusing right now on getting children out among those 4 million plus refugees at this point. And then their goal, of course, is to help all those people who do survive afterwards. So please give generously if you can. For you young people who only deal with electronics, I am happy to I brought my dusty old checkbook. I'm happy to Cash App or whatever and write a check for you. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other announcements? Does anybody have anything they want to bring up? No? Okay. So please join me in stating our mission. It's in your order of service. We seek answers everywhere, include everyone, live with compassion. So our first hymn today, please rise if you're willing and able, for number 170 in the gray hymnal, "We Are a Gentle, Angry People."
The Spiritual Alliance of Communities for Reproductive Dignity, also known as SACRED, I love that they got that acronym together there, is a group of justice-oriented people of faith, activists, and leaders from the reproductive health, rights, and justice community. This is their statement, their affirmation of their principles. Sacred congregations affirm the following principles. 1, all creation is good and includes a beautiful diversity of sacred bodies, sexualities, and reproductive journeys. 2, the dignity of sacred bodies and the moral agency of all people deserve respect, including the bodily autonomy and agency of women, queer people, gender-diverse people, people with disabilities, immigrants, indigenous populations, and people of color who have often been denied this respect. And 3, reproduction is a sacred responsibility, and prayerful decisions to have children, to not have children, or to end a pregnancy can be equally moral. So I need to apologize. I threw the tech people into a tizzy, so you're going to hear me yell slide before slides change at certain points. So I'm obviously not a minister. I have no theological training or authority. I don't have a ministerial stole or tippet, but I do have a sacred garment. I wear it every Saturday morning. It's really just a piece of colorful polyester. It's kind of flimsy, but it comes with the weight of my personal values and the embrace of my community. So I'm going to let you watch me put this on and try not to yell, "I need a grown-up," which is our usual cry. The other people you see wearing vests like mine here in the front, they're brave, are part of that community. Together, we clinic escorts work to protect clinic workers and patients. There is some physical protection involved, but our work is mostly about protecting rights and dignity. Our job is to make sure that the people we work with feel safe and valued and respected. And that pretty much sums up my personal religion. Stand up for what's right and love your community. But, alas, Lowryism is not a dominant religion in the United States today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ones that are. Again, I have no theological training or authority, but it's important to know where our ideas come from. We learned about the Torah and the Talmud a few weeks ago from an actual rabbi, and you're stuck with me for the review. I apologize again. And also, please forgive me for gendered language, but as I walk through these texts, gender rules and gender roles are a key part of the history. Slide. This passage from Exodus is the one you'll hear most often in the debate about abortion. And if men strive together and hurt a woman with child so that her fruit depart, and yet no harm follows, he shall surely be fined, according as the woman's husband shall lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if any harm follows, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. clearly problematic in many ways, certainly by the standards of Marie Laurieism. If two men are fighting and hurt another man's wife, the husband gets compensation for his property. If she miscarries, there's a fine, again, for the man's loss of property, but harm here is harm to the wife, not to the fetus. The living, breathing woman is, no matter how you interpret this, and it's been interpreted every which way, more valuable than that of the fetus. Notice that life for life applies only to the wife. Slide. Try it again. Slide. Thank you. Numbers 5:11 to 31 may also apply to the debate, and you may hear about it depending on who you ask. So it's kind of a wild ride, and it's full of Old Testament legalese. I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. It describes the ritual for sotah, which is a term for a woman suspected of adultery. And the ritual is an ordeal used to establish her guilt or innocence. If a man thinks his wife has been unfaithful, but he's not sure, he can't prove it, he takes his wife and an offering of 2 quarts of barley flour to a priest. The priest puts holy water in a clay pot, puts in some dirt from the floor of the tabernacle and the barley. There's a ritual, and the woman swears with an oath. The priest writes a curse on a scroll, washes the curse into the clay pot with the dirt and the holy water, and the woman drinks it. If she's been unfaithful, this is where it gets exciting, the water will enter her and become bitter so that her abdomen swells and her private parts shrivel up. But if the woman has not been faithful, she will be fertile. You won't be surprised to hear that this also has been interpreted in many ways. Some interpret it as the guilty wife becoming infertile. Others say she will die, and some interpretations actually see this as a recipe for inducing abortion. Slide, please. If this is what you thought of when you heard that passage, there's a good reason for that, and we'll get to it in another religious tradition soon. Slide again, please. This is the last one from the Old Testament, and it's not directly about abortion, but it does add to the conversation. And this one takes us back to the beginning, day 6 to be exact. God breathed into his nostrils and gave him the breath of life. Here life begins with breath. The Talmud, a 2-part Jewish text comprised of centuries worth of thought, debate, and discussion, explains that for the first 40 days of a woman's pregnancy, the fetus is considered mere fluid and is considered part of the mother until birth. The baby is considered a nephesh, which is Hebrew for soul or spirit, only once its head has emerged and it has breathed air, not before. Breath is life. There is no life before breath in this tradition. Slide again. And this leads us to the Quran. Chapter 23, verses 12 to 14 say, "And certainly did we create man from an extract of clay. And then we placed him as a sperm drop in a firm lodging. And then we made the sperm drop into a clinging clot, and we made the clot into a lump of flesh. And we made from the lump bones, and we covered the bones with flesh, and then we developed him to another creation. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators." Again, there's hadith is a discussion, like the Talmud with the Torah, is a verbal transmission or explanation from the prophet. And according to the hadith, the prophet described in detail the developmental periods between these stages as mentioned, is what I just read to you. Each one of you is constituted in the womb of the mother for 40 days, and then he becomes a clot of thick blood for a similar period, and then a piece of flesh for a similar period. If you're counting, that's 120. Then God sends an angel who is ordered to write 4 things. He's ordered to write down his deeds, his livelihood, the date of his death, and whether he will be blessed or wretched. And then the soul is breathed into him. So according to this teaching, fetus has a soul at 120 days, roughly in the middle of the 2nd trimester. This, too, as always, is interpreted in many ways. Some believe that the 40 days run concurrently. Some say they run consecutively. Some don't like it at all. But at any point, in any case, there is a point at which the fetus becomes a life, receives a soul. Slide, please. Here you see every single thing written about abortion in the New Testament. Study it, it's on the test. So why is so much of what we hear in the media, from our politicians, and in general discourse about life and religious beliefs, about life beginning in conception, and about the immorality of abortion. Slide again, please. I told you they'd be back. There may come a day when I stand up here and talk without using the word misogyny. Today is not that day. Slide again. Remember the Quran's fairly detailed description of growth in utero? Centuries later, the church was teaching that in intercourse, the male deposits in the female body a homunculus, which you see pictured here, or a little person, complete with a soul, where it is simply housed for 9 months without receiving anything beyond room and board from the mother. Once the baby's born, it's in peril until it's baptized, safely in the arms of the church, again represented by a man. Radical departure, right? Now we have a person. Slide, please. Witches. The age of witch hunting started under feudalism in the 14th century and lasted well into the Age of Reason in the 17th century. As it swept through Europe, it took different forms at different times, but always at its core, it was a ruling class campaign of terror against female peasants. Witches were considered a threat to both the Catholic and the Protestant churches, as well as to the state. Thousands and thousands of women were put to death. 900 were killed in a single year in the Würzburg area in Germany. At Toulouse, 400 were put to death in one day. In the bishopric of Trier in 1585, 2 villages were left with only 1 female inhabitant each. Excuse me. The biggest waves of witch hunts coincided with times of social upheaval. Peasant uprisings, conspiracies, the beginnings of capitalism, the rise of Protestantism, anytime there was a change, right? In times of change or unrest, in times that threatened the power of the church or the ruling elite, women were killed. It's important to keep in mind that these were not events of mass hysteria. They were organized, legalistic efforts led by the church and state. The Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of Witches, was written in 1484, and it sat on the bench of every judge, every witch hunter. They used the text. Slide, please. What were the crimes of the witches? Over the centuries, they were accused of many things, from political subversion and religious heresy to lewdness and blasphemy. There were, however, 3 central themes of accusations. 1, they were accused of being sexual creatures. 2, they were accused of being organized. And 3, they were accused of having magical powers affecting health, specifically of medical and obstetrical skills. I got that word out, yes. And here's a quote, that 3 general vices, this is from the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, the 3 general vices appear to have special dominion over wicked women, namely infidelity, ambition, and lust. Now there are, as it said in the papal bull, 7 methods by which they infect with witchcraft the venereal act and the conception of the womb. First, by inclining the minds of men to inordinate passion. Second, by obstructing their generative force. Third, by removing the members accommodated to that act. Fourth, by changing men into beasts by their magic art. Fifth, by destroying the generative force in women. And 6th, by procuring abortion. 7th, by offering children to devils, besides other animals and fruits of the earth, with which they work harm. The next line says, and I love this, all these will be considered later, but for present, let us give our minds to the injuries towards men. I want to insert an aside here. As I was preparing this and reading, this is a really fascinating read. I thought of a woman who talked to me in the parking lot at the clinic. She was gesturing, the protesters were yelling their biblical things that they're their beliefs, and she gestured at them and she said, I don't think they're reading the same book I read. This is the book their ideas come from. This is where they're from. Slide, please. I'm going to fast forward today and look at some stats. Among religious groups, opposition to the legality of abortion is mostly confined to white evangelical Protestants and other smaller conservative Christian groups. Strong majorities of Hispanic Protestants, white evangelical Protestants, and Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses say abortion should be illegal in most or all cases. The blue lines are it should be legal. The orange or yellow or greenish lines are that should be not legal in most cases. The majorities of other large Protestant groups, so mainstream, mainline Protestant groups, and black Protestants say abortion should be legal in most or all cases. Catholics are pretty evenly divided. Actually, there's a little bit of an edge for it should be legal. And majorities of all non-Christian religious groups support legal abortion in most or all cases. Muslims have the narrowest majority at 51%, but all the groups have more than 6 in 10 favor of abortion legality. More than 7 in 10 unaffiliated Americans, nuns, the fastest growing group, support the legality of abortions. An interesting little point here is that the UUs are down here with that big blue line that says 83 on it, but then there's an asterisk that said they could find more than 100 of us to ask, so. Slide, please. More stats. Every year in the United States, 6.4 million people get pregnant. Half of them, so 3.2 million people, of these pregnancies are unplanned, and 40% of unplanned pregnancies end in abortion. Slide, please. 1/3 of U.S. women will have an abortion by the age of 45. Count the women you know. Abortion is and always has been a normal part of reproductive life. Not always safe, but always common and always normal. So why is, again I ask, so much of what we hear in the media, from our politicians and in general discourse about life beginning at conception and about the immorality of abortion? I have some theories, and you can probably guess that they involve threats to people used to being in power. It's been a while since there's been a bit witch burning, but there are other ways to keep people afraid, to make them feel unsafe expressing their views. The first is by power of the state. The Supreme Court is on track to gut or overturn Roe this spring. If the Supreme Court does that, 21 states would immediately ban or severely restrict abortion. That includes Michigan. We have a trigger law in place from 1931. 566 abortion restrictions were passed into law between the beginning of 2011 and April 2021. These restrictions are designed to make abortion inaccessible. So even though it's legal in all 50 states, it's not accessible to huge parts of our population, notably people of color and people without wealth. It's expensive and it's difficult. These restrictions are working. 6 states have only 1 abortion clinic in the entire state. Roe v. Wade is de facto dead now that SB 8 in Texas has been upheld. Other states are copying it. They're going to follow that rule. So it's de facto gone. The second prong is that religious organizations, mostly evangelical and Catholic, support violence against those seeking and providing abortions. Protesters, as anyone in a fancy vest will tell you, harass and shame patients and clinic staff as they enter abortion clinics. They call women murderers, they call them horrible names, they shame them, they lie, they threaten them, and they try to pressure people into having children they don't want. There have been thousands of acts of violence, clinic bombings, kidnappings, and threats against abortion providers, clinics, and clinical staff. In 2018 alone, there were 1,369 reported violent acts. The National Abortion Federation reported that in 2020, clinics nationwide experienced a, quote, increase in vandalism, assault, and battery, death threats, threats of harm, stalking, and hoax devices or suspicious packages. Again, anybody in a vest can tell you about this. 11 abortion doctors and other clinic staff have been assassinated by anti-abortion terrorists. Slide, please. And it's important to keep in mind that the core of the theocratic movement behind the assault on abortion also aims to eliminate birth control, LGBTQ rights, and more. It's imperative that we talk about abortion. We need to take the narrative back. We need to talk about abortion as a normal thing, a moral decision that is part of the bigger picture. We need to talk about it as one aspect of our beliefs as UUs and as citizens. So as always at the end of the sermon, I say, what can you do? You can learn more about what's going on. You can talk to one of the clinic escorts here today. I have resources as well. Talk to your friends, both you, and non-you. Practice framing abortion as one of many moral reproductive choices. Don't let that dominant narrative push your story. Tell your story and share your beliefs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marie. That was amazing. Right now we'll be doing the offering. As we take the offering, we acknowledge the generosity and intention to support and build this welcoming community. If you are visiting us for the first time and you are comfortable doing so, please stand and tell us where you're from and how you heard about us. We would like to meet you. Okay. A perfect heart is one that has known love and loss, joy and sorrow. The perfect heart is one that has been shared. As joys and sorrows of our community are shared, please direct your energy, prayers, and meditations as a gift of compassion and strength. I don't think I got any texts today. Does anybody have any joy or sorrow they'd like to come up and share?
Hi there, I'm Libby Berger,
And Harry Munson.
and as of today, we've been married 41 years. The best 41 years of my life.
Hi, I have a joy. Every year there's a crop hunger walk in our community, and it's coming up on Sunday, May 1st. And if you're not familiar with the crop hunger walk, what it does is 75% of the funds raised goes to Church World Service, which does good works around the world, and then 25% goes to local food banks. And I have a joy that some people in our church will be walking in the crop hunger walk, and you can give them a donation if you wish. Would the people who are going to walk in this year's crop hunger walk please stand up so people can know who they can give donations to? All right, thank you very much.
Good morning. My name's Audrey Greer, and my husband Tony and I have been here 3 Sundays in a row. But I want to thank you all for making us feel so welcome. We have church shopped before, And you'd be amazed at how many churches are not welcoming. They'll look right through you or over you, but this church, everyone has been so kind and generous, including Reverend Glenn, who's not here, but that's okay. But we wanted to thank you. That's the first joy. And the second joy is, last Sunday, the choir sang so beautifully, didn't they not? I mean, they sang and uplifted our spirits and enhanced the worship service. So we would like to thank the choir and the director and Diana for doing such a lovely job. Thank you.
Hey, yeah, I have actually a sorrow. I mean, although I respect everybody's right to an opinion, and we live in a
Please rise as you are willing and able for number 108 in the gray hymnal, My Life Flows On, an Endless Song.
Our closing words are, we extinguish, easy for me to say, we extinguish this flame, by Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. Those we carry in our hearts until we are together again.